So this is our project for Saturn Search, which is an interactive parts search engine for data management. I'm Cullen Pulisic, along with my teammates Josh Singh, Ryan Schneider, and Nikhil Gupta. So our motivation for this was essentially thinking about it as a too long didn't read option for researchers who want to find parts from academic literature. So normally this process is pretty intensive. It takes a long time. We wanted to shorten it so that the data management and the export files for scraping parts off of existing literature within synthetic bio methods is, pretty much already at the tips of the fingers of the user.
So now we're going to jump into a demo. So basically, we started off with a, so our application is a Python script, and the GUI is written in PyQt5, which is just a Python wrapper for Qt functions. And basically, we started off with a large search bar, and you can type in your query and then hit search. It's cut off right now from the screen, but so we'll just skip ahead a little bit. So basically, once you search, you'll get into this loading animation where the search is being computed on a background thread. And usually each search takes about 1 to 4 minutes, depending on how many matches your query has. And then we'll get to a point where now we have our comparing screen where we'll have the papers listed from the highest relevance score to the lowest relevance score. And the higher relevance score, the higher your query corresponds to that paper. And then basically, when you click on a paper, what we're seeing here is that it'll show you a list of the genes and parts in that paper. And then in that list, you can click on those parts and genes, and you'll be able to, if it is a gene, you'll be able to export the GenBank file, where you'll just download it to the local directory just by clicking that button. Or you can also, for any paper, you can click on export JSON, and then you'll be able to, as you see right here, we're about to click on it. And when you click on export JSON, it'll just it'll export the JSON file to the local directory. And so we'll skip ahead a little bit after they click it. We'll see here. And these JSON files correspond to our PMID. And our PMID is the indicator we use for each paper. So it's a unique ID for each paper. We see JSON, so a nice little JSON file, and then we also have the ability of a GenBank file. So here we have Saturn Search Alpha, and that's our first iteration that's our first release of Saturn Search. So basically, it's a pretty standard PyQt program. We're deriving from a Q main window class. We initialize our main screen, initialize our comparative screen, and these are all on a stacked layout, which is something where Qt allows you to have. I mean, we're using multiple nested layouts, but mainly everything's in a stacked layout, and that's how you're able to traverse screens like that when you press search. And then down here we have some of our functions where we dynamically generate objects, and so this is where, when you click on a paper, you'll parse that paper for its PMID. You'll get the query results. You'll find parts and genes that correlate with that PMID, and will generate parts dynamically. And then these are some of the writing functions for writing out a GenBank file and then writing out a JSON file. And so, and then I'll just show that up here we're using a thread pool to handle so it's just a nice implementation of having a queue for threads where you can just push in worker functions, and they'll perform a worker thread. So basically, we have this is our call to the backend. And now we'll talk some more about that.
Yep. So essentially, what we're looking at for the backend NLP model was a latent Dirichlet allocation model, or an LDA model. It essentially takes a paper, or a text in this case, where it will take that input in and map the topic distribution around that paper in order to better typify the subtopics that correspond to that paper. So in this case, the subtopics that we generated from this unsupervised model were developed from a training corpus centered around synthetic bio. So this is an example, right? You feed the model in, it understands the train nets. After that, with the topic modeling, you'll see this is an example where essentially, say, you put in a test document and you get subtopic 3, 20% correlation, subtopic 4, 33, etc. After that, we need to focus on part extraction. So as you can see here, there's an example of some text annotation we did in order to identify the best way to get a machine to recognize parts within a larger text document for papers. We figured the best way to do this would be to deploy it on the cloud. After that, we looked at exactly, what the best option would be, and that option ended up being IBM Watson's API. So we were able to train the model from that. So this is an architecture you can see that we developed. Essentially, the LDA model is used to map to the query. The papers that are received from that, those are compared. That creates a paper ranking of relevance. And then from that, we extract biological parts from the text using Python and using the Watson Cloud natural language understanding. And then from that, we get selected data. So the main challenges with this were distinguishing between parts and methods. So wanted to create a better way to map, another entity such as methods instead of just parts. Beyond that, we also wanted to try to determine the best way to understand genetic parts and their relationship within the paper. So we thought maybe creating genetic networks within papers might be the best way to do this. Lastly, wanted to maybe make the application UI a web app so that it would be more portable. Looking forward, we just wanted to underscore that the point of this thought process was around developing modularity, around developing better data infrastructure, and really that was our mission statement with this. So lastly, we just wanted to share some code real quick. So you can see right here, this was the script that we ended up using. Yeah, you can see right here, this is the script we ended up using for extraction. So you can see we have the NLP credentials for Watson's model right here. After that, we extract the data. We take this data and we use a lot of NLP text cleaning methods and training models that are exported to other locations on the disk and other scripts within the directory. So after that, we train it on the model that we use. We have a specific model ID for the customized model we trained, and we respond and export this information to the GUI using these entity responses. So that's our presentation.